Alright guys, hello. Hope you are online. If you are, please do say hi in chat and let me know if you can hear me. If you can't hear me, then I'm not going to continue talking. So, oop, Jimenez, hi. Thank you very much. Okay, so today, sound is good. Venas, hello. Okay, so excellent to have two of you because this session is perfect for you guys. Okay, let me just adjust the screen because for some reason it's too big. Weep. Like that. Okay, sorry about this. It's just a little bit annoying that I'm not 100% ready. Okay, so what we want to do is go back to basics, okay? And back to basics means that we just revisit some of the stuff that we learned in previous 10, 15 lessons. So that's really cool if we can. And I will say ask questions, okay? So if you have some questions, you can either send it to me on Skype or you can send it to me inside of this chat. So please do add questions, and no matter how basic they are, okay? Because I want to cover quite a lot, so it's going to be a mix of everything. Perfect example for this, what I want to cover is this Animus project, because Animus project, as you all know, covers a huge amount of things, okay? So it connects everything that is there to connect to each other. So it's extremely complex project, all right? So we have a website, which is great, but we have a backend, which is great. We have tasks and jobs running in the background, which is great. We have artificial intelligence, which is running in the background too. We are connecting to the satellites, to the weather data, to the map data. We are getting databases of soil, plants, fertilizers, etc. Then we have a website which is doing stuff. Then we have a web shop apparently, which we are selling our products and services. And we have a mobile application which obviously we want to integrate on iOS and Android, and we have to send push notifications, send emails, send notifications inside the browser. So basically it has everything, okay? So if you can think of something, okay, in terms of programming languages, in terms of databases, in terms of concepts, etc. This is a perfect project because pretty much any question that you ask me, I can show you on this project and answer it for you guys as such, okay? So whatever you were afraid to ask, please do ask and I will answer as best as I can, okay? Today there are no stupid questions, only stupid answers, okay? So only me can say something silly, but hopefully I won't. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so what I have in terms of Animus is, just like everywhere else, my local development, and I have the website itself on the server. And if you don't know what is the difference, we will have a session on that to explain what is specifically difference between servers and the websites. But what I explained in one of the first sessions when we talked about development is that your development environment should be as close as possible, if not identical, to the server. Because if it is, then you don't get unexpected behaviors. All right? So this is what we pretty much have, okay? Pretty much. There are rare occasions where they are different. One is like metaphors, which includes Unity servers to synchronize where the players are for multiplayer mode. One of the things that you can't do locally is have callbacks from Stripe paying systems because your computer is not reachable publicly via URL address, and so on. So there are small differences that, as I say, we'll have a different session to cover, but it should be pretty much the same and it should run the same. In order for it to run the same, the version number of everything that is installed should be same, okay? So once again, I say we have to run PHP 7.3, that's our current version. There's 7.4, there's 8 now, maybe even 8.1 out there. But we are using one which is supported. Now 7.3 stopped being supported recently, I think a few months back, so we need to upgrade at some point. But currently our servers are running 7.3, we are running 7.3. MySQL, if you have Ubuntu 18, you will probably have 5.6. However, 8 works fine. I tested a number of applications with 8, so 8 is also good. Okay, Apache doesn't put too many versions, so 2.4.3 I think is pretty much what we have. Those three, easy. Okay, PHP obviously has a number of plugins enabled, like for image and other stuff. Okay, it has these plugins. Apache has a plugin for pretty URLs and so on. So we have a list of plugins which are constant. We don't change, we don't add new ones. So everything that we are doing works with them. If I talk about Python, which is our AI programming language, if I talk about jQueries, JavaScripts, and Vue, etc., again, same kind of methodology applies, because Vue that we are using, it was version 2 in a mobile app. It's not version 3. So if you install 3, it's not going to work because they broke quite a lot of stuff. So if something doesn't work, you can't get it up and running, first of all, make sure that versions are the same. Okay? Apart from versions, if everything is running for you, great. Now, there are three things that I always say. If something doesn't work, it either doesn't work because your code is wrong, your data is wrong, or your configuration is wrong. So if I exclude configuration, assuming the configuration is fine and everything works as expected, okay, then the problem that you might have is either database or it's your software, okay, your program, what you wrote. Now, quite often, if I say, okay, in Animus, give me all fields, okay, so I want to see all the fields in Animus. So I go here and say, give me all the fields. Okay, now what I want to see is all the fields which belong to me as a user. Okay, and user, my address is stored in the database. Okay, and my user ID is, I don't know, 10. Okay, so what we are typically looking is for fields which have user ID number 10. Okay, but if for some reason your data is imported from somewhere else or combined because you are working on multiple projects, it can happen that there is no user 10, that fields belong to user 15. And of course, then you are either going to have an empty screen in the example I just gave, so you're like, where are my fields? I don't see any. Or it's going to complain if you try to address them specifically. And then the problem is in the data. So quite often, when I update the database, I send a message to all the people who are developing, telling them I updated the database. Please go and fetch the newest version of the database from the wherever I put it, okay? In this case, it's on the main website. So I know that, for example, Jesus didn't have, when he was adding a new task, his drop down. So if he goes here, actions, and then it says new action, and then he says field, there was no fields here, okay? Why? Because his user is not connected to any fields. So this was empty, and he can't create a new action if he doesn't apply a field ID which belongs to him. So that is obviously sometimes errors with the database, okay? And you can correct that by modifying the database or just downloading the database that I suggest for you to do. Now, of course, I, as a user, Andre here, have all these fields assigned to me. If you log in here as some other user, you might have a different fields. So sometimes you do need to modify this at your local machine, either by logging in as Andre and see what is happening, or logging in as, or changing the ownership of the fields in your database. So those are the two typical errors which I see again and again and again. And people ask me, oh, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Yep, that's usually the case. One other example that I want to show you before I go into the questions is very simple, okay? And we are actually going to fix this quite soon. So if I go to, not mobile development file, sites, if I go here, okay, see this folder, this is Laravel's thing, Bootstrap, packages and services PHP, okay? First they are git ignore, okay? And this is a file that I can safely delete. So I'll delete, move to trash, gone. And if I go on my computer, go to any of these Animus pages, okay? And then go back here, boom, they're back, okay? So, which is great news, they are back. Let me try to share this monitor, this bloody cast projector. Oh, it's still not listed. Screen mirroring, it's not listed. I can't see it. It's casting thing to projector, but projector doesn't exist. Go to YouTube, there is, it's over there on my computer, you can see it on the YouTube. Okay, sorry, I was too late today. So, what are these two files? These two files are auto-generated files which Laravel scans kind of vendor folders, and then it lists everything what is in the vendor folder there. So it doesn't have to scan it for every user every single time. So it's basically cache of those vendor folders which I installed and services which I installed, okay? Now the problem with this is if I change the services that I installed or change the packages, so I add a new vendor or upgrade the vendor or remove the vendors, typically when I remove stuff, these files don't get automatically updated. And your software dies because it reports some service provider is missing or some vendor file is missing, and you are, oh my God, I have no idea what this means. And basically what it means, delete these two files, it will regenerate itself, and probably the problem will be fixed, okay? So as I say, we will, Thomas and me are playing with the idea just to have some script which will automatically do that every now and then. As soon as it gets the error, it just deletes them, and then hopefully that will fix it for us. So one of the questions here, okay, I think I seen that there was a question about vendors. What vendor is? Yeah, so kind of let's start with that one, okay? So, any programming language, okay? If I'm working with JavaScript and I want to build the application of JavaScript, I use Node.js. So that's like a little framework, so I have lots of different things like routing, logging in, sessions, screens, etc., etc., okay? And if I'm using Node.js, I can go in various directions like React, Ionic, Angular, Vue, doesn't matter, it's the same crap, okay? The first thing what you need to do in order for this to work is install the node modules, okay? So you run npm I, which installs all the little packages, little software, little parts of the software, which perform the functionalities that you need, okay? Now those are node modules, they are called packages or libraries that get installed. And typically what we have is they depend on each other, so once you install one, it also wants to install 3 others, and then it has 1,000 different versions and they are not compatible, and then you have a problem. The same thing is in Python, Django, doesn't matter what you are using. If I want to install Python crap, okay, typically I have this requirements.txt file, and then I say Python or pip or something, install whatever is written in this requirements.txt, and then installs all these little packages that are required for this application to work. So hopefully by now you also can guess what the vendor folder is, okay? Vendor folder is the packages for PHP, okay? So these are all additional packages, pieces of software that we need in order for applications to run. Now, because Laravel is managed through these packages, and Laravel has many packages that it needs, they are also installed here. For some funny thing, you will see Laravel here, okay? But you might also see Illuminati and crap like that, that's also them, okay? How do I install this? Well, I install it using Composer, okay? So Composer is this package JSON file, okay? Sorry, Composer JSON in this case. Package JSON is for Node.js. And it just installs all these things that I need here. So as you can see, I, for Animus, use Laravel Framework 8.75. Okay, so then what it does, downloads all those files, creates the folder vendor, if it doesn't exist, creates a folder Laravel, and there is this framework, okay? And then after that we say, give me Sanctum, here's Sanctum, give me Tinker, here's Tinker, give me UI, here's UI. And sometimes they will install their own stuff, what they depend on, okay? So not all of these have to be listed here, okay? Because as I say, if it has dependency, it will install that too. Now, in all cases, these vendor files or node modules or whatever they're called should be on git ignore. You never push them to the system, okay? To the repository, to the git, you always build them locally yourself. However, for AppSource stuff, I'm not doing that, okay? And PHP is slightly different, okay, than Angular and crap like that. So Angular, what you do with all those node modules, it builds an app, and then you need to distribute whatever you built. So you don't need node modules on the server for server to work. You need the thing that you compile. In PHP, there is no compiling. We don't compile anything. So I need vendor files on the server for them to work. Okay? So if I git ignore these files, okay, then I have to go to the server and run composer install on the server. Okay, which works if I only have one server ever. But if AppSource is something that needs to be installed on hundreds of different servers all the time, then I'm not going to visit every single one of them and run this, and then if some packages are not existing anymore, etc., causing me issues. So this is why, for this reason, these packages I always push. They are never on git ignored, these vendor files, and we don't ever make any changes to them. Okay? Why? Well, there are multiple reasons. Everybody who tried building Angular application, like, you know, guys in CodeTown, etc., was struggling tremendously to, if something changes and you need to build these again, you know, well, it says, oh, this dependency doesn't exist anymore. This one was abandoned. This one is hacked. This one is, you know, it's a nightmare to find the ideal combination. So if you just say, hey, I'll just add few, don't, okay? We have to carefully think of every single one that we add here and make sure that A, people who wrote it are not some, you know, stupid kids in Montana, okay, who wrote it one afternoon as a school project and then forgot about it. There is a professional organization behind it which makes sure that it's backwards compatible, that it's fully supported, that it has updates, bug fixes, etc., etc., and that it has literature and documentation about this. So these we are carefully choosing. So I'm always saying to my junior developers, don't just install any without talking to me and making sure that we understand what we are doing here. Sometimes we want to change a file in this vendor folder. We want to add some functionality. That we never do. Why? Because if I run update, whatever you changed will be deleted. So I can go here in framework of Laravel, go here, find authorization, you know, whatever, authorization manager, and I can type some code here, okay? If I update this, that code will be erased. So whatever functionality I added here in vendor will be deleted. So we never change vendor files ourselves. Okay, so vendor is really important. It gives us lots of functionalities that we otherwise would have to program, okay, like Swift emailer, which is helping us send emails, you know, so it's very good, very useful, but we have to know what we are doing here, and we can have a section on those vendor files, but as I said, there's just too many. It will always be a little bit generic as such. So I hope I answered the question about vendors, that you now understand a little bit better what the vendor file is. And this is Bootstrap service and package files. That's also the question that I just answered before this. Okay. Now, there are multiple questions about, and I will use I think this one will do the trick nicely. I can even use this one. Okay? we still don't understand what these things mean, okay? What does class mean? What does extend mean? What does use mean? What does return, public, function, namespace, and all that, okay? We had a session about object-oriented programming, okay? And it is very important session, you know, so if you don't understand it, if you don't have any questions, learn more about object-oriented programming, because all of these frameworks that I mentioned before, and programming languages, etc., they use object-oriented programming, okay? So, we said in that lesson that class, this thing, is a blueprint. Okay? So, typically, the name of the file, push controller, and the name of the class inside is the same. Okay? It doesn't have to be in all cases, okay, but then it would be stupid, okay? I wouldn't be able to find stuff, you know, I would find class satellite controller inside farm controller. Makes no sense, okay? So this name and the name of the file, same thing, okay? Now, the class is our key thing, okay? Everything in object-oriented programming, which is what we are doing, works with classes. Everything. But classes themselves don't do anything. This is the abstraction that is very hard for people to understand. I can't just say class run. It doesn't run. Class do shit. It doesn't do shit. Okay? Because class is a program which is like written in the book, like instruction manual in the book. When the book is closed and nobody is reading it, it's just a blueprint for somebody who will come, take that page, and then create that thing. It's a recipe how to make things, okay? What sort of things can we make? What sort of things can we make by classes? Well, absolutely everything, okay? Everything that exists in this world, everything that exists in this universe, and everything that we can think of, which doesn't exist in this universe. So every single thing can be represented with a class, okay? So if I'm thinking about, you know, imaginary Loch Ness monster, I can create a class Loch Ness, which will represent that monster, okay? So the function of the class, what is its functionality? Don't mix this with function, okay? What does it do, class? It can do whatever, yes, you can break the through space-time continuum, yes, okay? Don't call the class black hole because bad things will happen. All right, so when I have the class, I can represent anything, okay? And the class, I can define certain properties. I call them properties, there are other names, but in order for us to understand each other, okay, please let's use the same language, okay? So property of the class is its element. So Loch Ness monster will have a property weight, 15 tons, okay, or 10 tons, depending on the size, yeah? It will have height, 10 meters. It will have speed. It can swim 20 kilometers per hour. It will have a color. It's gray. It will have number of legs, 18. I don't know. Those are what I refer properties, okay? So the property can be a name, like Andre or Thomas, or it can be a date of birth. It can be height. So it can be simple variables, simple values, or it can be other complex values. It can be whatever you want. So, the second thing that classes define is basic functionality. So what is the basic functionality of LockNext monster? Well, it can swim, it can run, it can eat people, it can hide. So those functionalities that we define are functions, okay? So if I want my LockNext monster, which is a class, to actually exist inside the computer, I have to make it using this blueprint. So I instantiate the class, okay? Make the instance of it, okay? There are two main ways to do this, okay? One is using a new command, and the other one is by using some function which will call the stuff from the database, etc., and I will explain that in a second, okay? So, if my LockNext monster status, which is a property, is, let's say, idle, it doesn't move, then I have a status speed is 0. If I call a function start swimming, then that function will change in my mind the two properties that I just mentioned. The status would be now swimming and the speed will be 20. I can call another function increase speed by 5, and this by 5 means the 5 is typically an argument of this function, and that will add to property speed this value 5, okay? So the code for my LockNext monster is this one here, okay? However, I can make 20 LockNext monsters, but I don't need to make 20 copies of the code. They all use the same code base, the same class, because they are of the same class. So all LockNext monsters that I create are of the same class. That's why we have the name class. Okay? Classes have function construct, and every class has this, in any programming language has this, even if it's written or not written. This is the function which is called when you make an object out of this class, when you make the instance, okay? So how do I make the instance of the class, okay? Well, I will go to the sensor controller because I will show you those things here, okay? This line here, okay? This is an important line. Everything in PHP is, which is variable, is dollar. Has a dollar before it, okay? So dollar feed, I know it's a variable. Everything which is in blue here is a keyword, okay? That's a keyword of the programming language, and these are reserved, okay? You can't call variable public function, if, else, it will get confused, okay? New, etc., okay? So that's the keyword which instructs program to do something. And the new command makes an object. So this makes an object. But which class is going to use, because I have many classes? Well, it's going to use class feed. Okay. So it's going to make a new object of the class feed. But where does it find this? Which file here in all this is that file? Because I might have multiple files called feed. Well, this is why we say use app feed. So this is my app, and then inside the app I do have feed. So this use is basically telling us which feed do we refer to later on. Okay, it doesn't do anything else, it just clarifies in PHP which feed this is. So I can write here use backslash app backslash feed, and then I don't need this feed because I just put its full name, wherever it is. Okay? But I don't do that. I just put use, and then I can use this feed as such. The other way to create an instance of the object, is to use that class name here, and in PHP these double dots or double column, okay? So that will make a new instance of the class, okay? But we have many options here how we can do that, and these options are PHP, but also Laravel options, because Laravel gives us additional functionality because we installed it as part of the vendors, all these functions, okay? So if I say find ID, that's a very confusing one if you don't know what the hell does it mean, okay? So, what does the computer do here? This is very important for you all to understand. So, it says field sensor, I don't know what field sensor is. Field sensor is app field sensor, okay, fine. So, I find in app field sensor, okay? So, field sensor is class, called field sensor, great. But it extends model. Haha, what the hell is model? Well, it's Illuminati Database Eloquent model. So that's its full name. Now model is another class, and this is a class provided by Laravel, okay? And like every other class, it has its purpose. It does something specific, okay? Because field sensor here doesn't do anything specific. I could have called this my, bum, pretty much same thing. Just the name doesn't mean anything. It's this what defines what the hell it does. And this one doesn't do much on the paper if you just see these 3 lines. But the model is something that comes with hundreds of functions which are all related to talking to database. Okay? Let's call it talking to database. Okay, so models are linked to the database. If I find a model in Python, this might not be true. Maybe the model in Python is doing something else. If I don't use Laravel, if I use Yi framework, maybe model in Yi framework does something else. So this is why it's important to see, okay, who is providing this model, what's their documentation, and I can read the documentation and understand what functionality and what the hell does that model, does that class do, okay? So, as I said, this is all connected to the database. And this specific class that comes packaged and explained in great details in their documentation says, hey, you know what? You can define and use a reserved variable because we defined a property of a model called table. So that's predefined. And the table is the database table that we are referring to. Okay? So if I didn't put field sensors here, the database table will automatically use field sensors, but probably without underscore. I'm not sure, but so I don't even have to specify that, okay? So it does it for me, it's helping me out, okay? Now, if I want, in the table, if I have the 2 columns, created that and updated that. If I have the 2 columns, then I have timestamps is true. But if my table doesn't have columns created at and updated at, then this is another reserved property of this class model that I use for defining do I want those two columns or not. Field sensor is class that belongs to the upper class model. That's completely and utterly opposite of what you said. Model is the base class, and this one is above it, it's built on it. So it has all the stuff that model has, plus all the stuff that we add, okay? So field sensor doesn't belong, it extends, okay? So imagine my clone, okay? So I make my clone, so my clone gets all the properties of DNA that I have. Okay, but then it gets completely different experience because it lives in a different country and so on and so on. So it extends me in a way. Okay, so model is parent of this class, you know, so it's something that it extends. But model can extend another class, and it does actually, okay? So this is how we build stuff, okay? Make these structures more and more complex. So this is the first really useful thing about classes is that you can build upon them, combine them, make new classes out of existing classes and make more and more complex structures. So if I want mythical creatures, I will create class mythical creatures, then I will say mythical creatures, that swimming, and then I will have Loch Ness as mythical creatures as swimming, so I can then create all the other mythical creatures, dragons, butterflies, I don't know what, okay? So timestamps is that, and the guarded is another property that's reserved that comes from the model, and there are more than this, okay, but these are the ones that we are typically using. And guarded means, well, if we want to protect some data in the database, so when users enter the data, that data is not can't be deleted or updated, okay? So we can protect some columns. I'm just looking to see is there anything guarded, but I don't see. Typically, I don't have anything guarded, so I get full access as a programmer to all the data in the database. So these models have multiple functions like all, like get, like where, and so on, okay, etc., etc. They have multiple functions, and in this example, in this line 55, I'm using function find. And in the documentation it says this one, you need to pass an argument, the number, okay? The number is the ID number of the field sensor that you want to find. So if I go to my admin utilities database, so a link in a new tab, and I go to my Animus, and I go to field sensors, that's the ID. So if I pass number 1 here, it will find this one. If I pass 2 or 5, it will find these ones. So what does this function find do when it finds it in a database? Because every function has a functionality. It does something like we said, jump or run or swim for knockless monster. This one not only finds this record, but creates a new instance of the object field sensor and then assigns all these columns as its properties. I will say that again, okay? So when I say find, it gets this from the database, all this information. If there is more, it will get more. It gets all of it, one row, in this case, creates an object based on this class field sensor, and then creates the properties which are named exactly like this, with values exactly which are from the table. So, if I want then to do something with it, okay, I can, because now it's created, I can do whatever I want with it. This thing, this object, which is a type of field sensor, is assigned to variable sensor. So if I say print sensor tang name, I am accessing property name, and it will print test sensor 1 if ID is 1. If I pass ID 2 here, it will print any name, otherwise test field, whatever. So all of these are available because this function find created that for me. That's its role. If I move this here, it's not going to work because it doesn't know what the hell sensor is. It will know later, but it can't work now. And if I say print sensor color, this will not work because this table doesn't have a column called color, so of course it's not going to work. Unless I say color is blue, so I can define that it doesn't have to be always in the table. I say private or public, so it can be accessed. Then it will work. Now, I want to give you 3 more very typical examples, okay? And then we will have a little break, okay? So, function get is like function find, and function all is like function find. They are related to each other because they are all Laravel functions of class model. Okay? They are all Laravel functions of class model, and as I said, there are at least 100 of them, okay? So this where is also one of those, okay? And these are the ones which we typically find in this code, okay? Typically find. Now get gets not one row from the database, but it gets some of these rows. So it might get first 2, it might get 2 and 3, it might get first and third, it might get all of them. It might get just row 2. So it gets 1 or more rows, or 0, okay, from the database. This where is the condition. And this condition can be any conditions. This is bigger than this is older than that, okay? But typically conditions are matched. So in this case, I say client ID, and this comma just means equal, so user client. So my user client number, if it's 1, it will get all of these 3. If my client ID is 2, then it will return nothing, okay? So this thing gets 0, 1 or more rows from the table. For each row, listen to this carefully. For each row creates an instance of the object, in this case is field. So if it gets 3 rows, it gets 3 instances. If it gets 5 rows, it gets 5 instances. All of them are type field. Because there are so many of those, it does one more thing for us. It puts them in a thing called collection, which is basically an array. It's a list which contains all these elements. So get gets few of those. I don't know how many match this condition, which I put in a function where. Creates our objects and puts them in a group called collection. All is simplified get, so it just says give me all, give me everything, give me all the rows, and does exactly the same. Creates all the objects and put them in collection. Clear? Any questions? While I'm here, you will find funny one, auth. Okay? Now this auth is another class. Just like field is a class, and it has function user. Now this is not a model, okay? Because this is a different type of class, because auth doesn't extend model. Okay? But this auth user actually works in a very similar way, because it will create, it will find a model called user, it will find who is the logged in user, and then it will create an object called user of that person who is logged in, and then it will assign it to the variable user. So at some point you heard the word model. Okay, so this bloody auth user is extremely useful thing, because it does 20 things for me. It finds who is logged in, it finds the user in the table, all its data, creates a user object on the user model, and then gives it to me so I can do whatever it wants. So I can put user, print user name, user surname, user email address, whatever I want, I can do that. And this is the same, it works on the same principle in all other programming languages, so it doesn't matter what you're using, it is very similar, okay? Just syntax might be slightly different, okay? But that's the gist of it. Any questions about this? So this is classes, modeling class. I think I explained it. Namespace app models user. Namespace blueprint root, Illuminati root. I didn't talk about that. Action, new action. I think we explained that, what this is going to do. What is request? I can cover that afterwards. I'll do JSON encode. I will talk about push notifications, true, false, I did, and I might talk about a little bit about roots, so it asks about roots here. Okay, so after the break, I will go and cover roots a little bit, requests, and then I will go to this push notifications. Okay, so guys, 3, 4, 5 minutes max, and then we will talk about it. And Ahmed is asking about Stripe. Well, you didn't pose the question in Skype or here, so what do you want to know, Ahmed? Send me a question and I will answer it. What is confusing you about Stripe? Thank you, and be back in 3, 4 minutes, all right? inshallah. Alright guys, so we are moving on, and as promised, I will talk now a little bit about roots, which are a little bit confusing for people still, because there are so many different things, requests, etc., etc. Slightly confusing, so I will go and explain this, how it works, okay? We have two main types of request. One is get, the other one is post, okay? So this is your bread and butter. Every time when a user goes to the browser and types URL, any URL, that's a GET request. So if I go to browser and type something in the address bar, okay, like appsforce.com, that's a GET request. Everything what you type here is a GET request. Okay? As I stated before in one of these sessions, the GET request is handled by the server application. In our case, in AppSource, it's Apache. It can be Nginx. Okay? And then it's passed to whoever knows what to do with it. It can be proxied to Unicorns and services like that, which then move it forward to whoever is dealing with that. In our case, how this is set up is set up that index PHP is dealing with most of our requests. Now, when you ask me which index PHP, this is where it gets confusing. If I put appsforce.com, for hell. If I put this, appsforce.com, appsforce.com, I don't want to press enter, okay? Apache is set up to find index PHP inside specific folder on our computer, okay? Specific folder is on Linux var www html. That's the folder. So if you don't type anything after this, it will open this index PHP outside of all these folders. However, Apache is set up like that. If I type appsforce.com/animus, okay, without this crap, if I type a subfolder here, then it will find some folder. So var www.html/animus, and then it will open index PHP inside Animus, which is this one here. Okay? So if I type Animus/public, then it will go to the public folder, Animus public, and it will try to open index PHP in this one, if it exists, because it might not exist. If it doesn't exist, then it actually automatically goes back to this index PHP. Okay? If I go /images, then it goes to this folder, images. If I go to /products, it goes to that folder. And it again tries to find index PHP or index HTML in some other cases. That's how they are set up typically to do. Because it doesn't find one, it goes back to the original index in the root of this request. Okay? But if I specify default.jpg here, it shows me this default JPEG image. Now, what Apache does, if it finds a file, it will actually just say, okay, whatever, just display that file. If I specify a folder, it then finds the index.php or index.html, but in most cases we use PHP one. What index.php does is it loads the Laravel application. And part of that application is this thing called routes. Okay? Because if the folder doesn't have index.php, such as Animus weather doesn't have PHP, because first, Animus doesn't have a subfolder called weather here at all, so there's no folder weather, so there's no index.php in it. As I said, it loads Animus Laravel application, and then it tries to match this weather with this weather that we put here. And then it has to be a GET request, because it comes from the browser. And then we open weather controller, which is in HTTP controllers weather controller, and then it calls the function, I closed it, sorry, view weather, which is this function here, and executes that function. Now, you can ask whether controller is a class. So not that it just runs this, it also makes the instance of this controller, etc., and makes the instance of user, and makes the instances of fields, and makes the instances of weather data, etc. So it does all this for us. Okay? So GET request is relatively simple. Because this comes from the browser, we have to typically return something back to the browser. And in this case, it's our view. So this is what we are returning. We are making a web page, and that web page is then displayed to the user, returned here, and that's the web page that is created. So that's a GET request. It can't be simpler. Now, see, the GET request, this function view weather, has nothing inside the brackets. Okay? Because it's GET request. The only thing what server knows is that the user typed this. Okay? There's no other information from the browser sent to the user. However, if I want to create a new sensor, okay, fill in this form, and then send this information to the user, okay? If I want to send this information back to the server, this is quite a lot of information, okay? So this is when I make a POST request. The POST request will contain all the information inside this form. How? You might ask. Well, it's a basic HTML. It's extremely old HTML stuff, okay? So if I look at this file, resources, views, new sensor, okay? I will have these inputs, HTML tags. See, 1, 2, 3, they are here. So, and each one of them will have a name, so gateway ID, sensor ID, name, etc. And they will be part of the form which will use a post thing and call this URL. So my web roots have somewhere URL called save sensors, which is this one. And then it calls the sensor controller, which is this guy here, and function save sensors. So sensor controller save sensors, which is this one. As I mentioned before, this is a post because that's how we made the page. Okay? That's how we made the page. And this function, this is how Laravel made it, but many others same, gets a parameter of type request. This is a class request, which is built in Illuminati, as I said, that's typically Laravel. Okay, so this is class request, which has its own functionality and all its properties and functions, etc. And that request is stored in the variable called request. And then using this request, I can access all of the stuff which the name, the gateway ID, sensor ID, all the stuff that user filled in the form. So fill this in, click submit button, calls this URL, it's a post method. Then that post method, by the same coin, the URLs, Apache figures out, does this exist, the folder, the index.php, it calls our index.php, launches the application. Part of that is web roots, finds the controller that's responsible for it, finds the function in the controller, and then executes this. Okay? What does it do? Well, it typically saves this sensor to the database. Okay? So if I have a save sensor, I will have somewhere function save, I don't know where that is. I don't see it even. New feed, create this. Sensor update, else, oh, it's missing. Interesting. This is wrong. It should have else. That is missing there. There are two ways that I can do this. I can go one by one of all the fields and then fill it in. Or I can just say create sensor create function. No, but that's not going to work. Sorry. There. So as I say, here I'm using create function of the model field sensor or update function of the model field sensor, okay? So if ID exists, so it means I'm updating existing sensor with the new data from my form, so that I say update. If ID doesn't exist, then I need to create new one with all the stuff from the request, so everything that's filled in. Of course, this requires me to add a little bit more programming to this in order to validate user input, because what if the user didn't fill in all the details that I'm in a problem, or if they typed their telephone number where their address is, etc. You know, that's what happens. So I need a little bit validation. But this is a basic thing, okay? So the post request sends as much data as possible, okay? So sometimes it's 1, 2 things, sometimes it's 20 things, okay? Now, we have an application called Postman, which we can use to simulate these requests, post and get, which is quite useful sometimes, okay? But I can also create a test controller and do the same thing, you know? So I have a little test controller which I'm using for various things, okay? So I can call some URL and then it executes few lines of text, same thing. I don't want to go in requests too long, but I will go here inside of this push controller, okay? So the function push execute, okay? That function, as far as I remember, is animus/push. That's one field which has 5 items, okay? So it's a form, it's a post request, and it passes these 5 pieces of information to this controller here. So here I'm using function request, but I could have done this other way around, same thing. So this alternatively is request user ID. It's the same thing, okay? So if I delete this and put that, it does exactly the same. So this function request finds this request basically and finds this piece of information. So this is PHP, this is more Laravel stuff, so both are correct, okay? So from the request, I read what the user sent me, okay? So I will have user type title body data, user type title body data. So these are 5. So I can go individually like this, or what I did here is I can just use request all, which is basically all 5 of them. Saves me a little bit of time. I don't have to type each one of them, and of course use if I make a spelling error, then I have a bug and then it doesn't work, etc., etc. Okay, so both are fine. Okay, if you want to do it individually, one by one, or if you want to do all, makes no difference. It will work if you type request user ID like this or request user ID. Both will work. So basically, what these variables get are the values that user enters. So if I say Timo, request title, hello, body, good, data, 1, 2, 3, then this user ID will be whatever the user ID of Timo is, because this is a drop down, so this will be the value 1, 3, 8, 9, 10. So in case of Timo, it will be number 8. Request type, same because it's a drop down, so it gives me this value from whichever is selected, the info warning request other, those are the values, so it's a string. Body will be this text here, and data will be this text here. Okay? Now, if I want to execute a push, then I have specific things what Google says you have to do it in a certain way, because we are using Google Push. So this is how we do that. Okay. But then I have something called action controller, and I don't know, do I have example here No, I don't. Okay? So basically when I save new action, as you can see here, I'm creating, I could have done this easily, but I couldn't. Okay? So if I say action, just like here, I could have created action, create request all. Okay? But in this case, I can't. Okay? Why? Because one of the information doesn't come from the input, because I want to get this user as an object and then find the user name in this case. So it's a little bit more complex, the data is connected, so I had to do it manually one by one. Okay? And sometimes this input like date, I can't just record the date in the format that it's typed in, because we type in European format and database supports American format, so I have to convert it into year, month, day. So I can't just do request all, I have to do few alternations here. Okay, so new action creates an object of type action, which is empty, but it's also a model. And then I assign the values. So I say action title is whatever the user put in the box title. Due date is whatever they put in a to-do date, but then I just convert it into the right format. The description is description, assigned to is the ID, but the assignee full name is user's name, which I get from the database at the end of the day using class user, model user, searching for specific user that was selected, getting the first one, so one and only, and then I can address its name, photo, and assign it to the action and store it and so on. Sometimes I need a complex object stored. Okay? So complex object is request tags. And let me show you this actually, what I mean by complex object. So if I go to Animus, actions, okay, and I create a new action, and I say tags, low, tags, high, tags, 0, okay? Now when I submit this, basically this is a list of things, okay? So it's a list of things which can have multiple items, okay? So in order to store complex objects such as lists, I need to convert it into string in the database, and then be able to convert the string back into this original object, which is list. Okay? Of course, I can have multiple columns and put each one of these in a column, but that's not very good in all cases, because in this case, I don't know, are they going to be 1 tag, 2 tags, 16 tags, and so on. So I don't know how many of those tags will I have. Okay? So it's not good to have a column for each one of them, because that doesn't work, okay, as I don't know how many columns will I have. This is why I do this request tags, which is, as I said, a list, an array, originally, and convert it into string of type JSON. So I use JSON call function, which is PHP function to convert array into string, and specifically string which has all those curly brackets and commas and stuff like that, and it's a key pair values. So, and if I use function JSON decode, then I get back my list. So, in order to store in a database in one big text field, I encode my complex object into JSON, and then I can decode it and pull it out later. So, What I want to do here is when I save the new activity, okay, new action, when I save this, I want to send a push notification to the user saying that they have a new task, new action assigned to them. Because we have a mobile phone where that user can log in. So this is my mobile phone. So if I log in here, then this application will register me for push notifications. No idea does that work, so I'll try a Fabris or because I didn't try this before, and password can be whatever, hopefully. Sign. Nope, it can't be whatever. Doesn't matter. Okay. So I want to send a push notification to the user. However, inside of this user table, this is a list of all my users. As some of these users have remember token. Okay, you can see 3 of them have. That token is the thing called FCM token, which I need to remember because that's their address to push. Okay, so basically what I want to do here, okay, I want to send a push notification. Okay, about this action. Okay, so first I need to check, does user have mobile app and has FCM token? Okay, and if it does, I need to send push. Otherwise, I can't send him push notification, I will send him email. Okay? So when I think of a complex problem that I want to resolve, I typically write down the comments in English explaining myself what I need to do. Okay. So I want to send a push notification about this action. So this action is $action. That's my action, $action. Okay? So $action has all the information about the action that I want to notify my user about. Now the user that I want to send the push notification to is the user that I select on this drop-down list. So if I say here Jasper and click add, then I need to send this push notification, work on the field, potato field, tag high, description, dig deep. Okay, so that's what I want to send to Jasper. Okay, so this field is called assignee. Okay, so this field assignee, okay, I get the user ID, and using that user ID, I find class user, which is a model, which basically means that this will find the first user in the table which matches this ID. In this case, it's Jasper. So in that case, if I even inspect this, I can tell you what exactly in the same it has somewhere ID of the user, it doesn't matter where it is right now. So this variable user here is exactly the user that I want to send the notification to, okay? So this is user, okay? Now, when I look at my table, okay, Jasper is this guy here, is 16, and he has a remember token. Okay, but if I selected a different user here, like Simitsa, that guy, sorry, is here, and he doesn't have a remember token. Okay? So depending on which user I selected in this dropdown, I either send them push notification or don't. Okay? So what I need to check is, does the user have a mobile app? Does he have a FCM token? So I know that if it says null here, then it doesn't. Okay? So that's what I'm going to check. If user, which is the whoever I assign it to here, remember token, so I'm getting the property because I know this is an object, I know it has property remember token because I know it's connected to this table, and that's the column, as I explained before, is not equal null. Okay? If it does, I need to push. So basically this goes here. Else, if it, I send him an email. Now from the push controller, I have this code. This sends the push request. This, I know it works because Mr. Jesus tested it, okay? However, I need to modify this code in order to match the shit that I have. Because I don't have user ID, type, title, body, and data, because this is not the same form. It's a different form which has completely different things, okay? User token. I don't need that, okay? Because I already have user remember token. So the token, I'm just going to change this, okay? That's the token. Now, the title is action title. I already have the title, it's there. So I'm just going to say title is action title. Type of the request, okay? Well, in this case, because I know from the types that I have different types, but it's just going to be info, okay? Because it was that drop down which had info, warning, etc. But this is just information. User ID, well, this is my assignee ID. Or, so it's that, or perfectly fine, user ID, because I already have user, is defined here, so I can have ID. Okay, type is info, title. Title is action title. Now, body of my text can be description. Okay, so I have action description, that's the body of my push notification. And the data that I'm sending, let's say I send the due date. So this is the date when it needs to be sent, okay? So token is that, this is the key for Google, this is the URL, and then it says, okay, use the title, which I, is here. Use the API key, which is here. Fields, message is notification. Where's my message? Message is this thing before. User token is this one here. Body, that's the body. Data, that's the data. Title is my title. Type is info, whatever it is. API key. And then it executes this. Okay? Now, typically I would put this in try-catch block, so if something goes wrong, so I can catch that, you know. But this should send the notification to my user who has a mobile application like Jasper, who has registered, and so on. Otherwise, I'll send them an email. Well, I'm just going to steal for the short time is how do I send an email from some other application which sends the email, okay? And I know my admin, the app, HTTP controllers, my apps force, no, my admin user controller. I think there is a function here, invite. Yeah, so that's the how I send the email. Of course, I have to do a few things, okay? I have to create the email inside my resources, views, so it should have emails and it should be here, but then user is user, token. I don't need token in this case because this is invite token, and then message is something that I have to create. But I already created the variable message, which is not really a message, so I need to create a message, so pass some information, which is going to be whatever I'm sending, you know, same thing as these things here. So basically, I just modify this code a little bit using the same data that I have here, and that's how I send the email. I'm probably missing one bracket, so that's that. So if I go back to Skype, I think that I explained request, I explained action, I explained routes a little bit, namespace, I think I covered that, controllers. Well, these namespaces, as I said before, they just match pretty much what this is. App HTTP controllers, that's the namespace of these controllers. So that's the folder structure, typically, okay? What others? App models, users. I explain what use is, blueprint, action field ID, JSON encode, I mentioned that. Now we have a notification to send to the users. I explain how I would do it. Timestamps covered that, post, get, vendor, bootstrap, covered everything. Now Ahmed asked a question, okay, about Stripe and callback, and I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, now, Jesus says, now I get why some data. Okay, fine, you get it, good. All right, so in next 10 minutes, I will just say something weird. And I'll show that on Git. Okay. Slinky 3. Okay, so you can see this. Let me maybe zoom in a little bit. Okay. So here's a little bit confusing thing. Where is it? Okay. So remember I talked about vendors today, okay? In order to process payment by credit card, okay, I can write the whole bloody thing myself, okay? Or I can use somebody else's payment by credit card, okay? So this was a really good thing that we didn't have to write everything ourselves. It saves us a lot of time. And basically, this is packaged by Spati or something like that. And it's actually a guy from Belgium who is a really good Laravel programmer. I even knew his name. So he creates a really good vendor packages which are professionally made. So kudos for him, and they have a relatively good documentation. Okay, so typically if I see a package from Spati, I know that's good stuff. All right, so Spati developed this package, and Thomas is happy because it's Belgium. Kudos. So what you can do in a package, vendor package, you can have your own views and you can have your own routes. Okay? So, again, vendor package can have its own views and its own routes. Okay? Now, how does my application, web routes, this folder, knows that this package has its own routes? Well, this is how it knows. I just put this line of the code, okay? How do I know I put this line of the code? Because I read the documentation of the guy. That's what he says. If you want webhooks for Stripe as a method of payment, credit card processor, put Stripe. And if you want, I don't know, somebody else, put their name there, and it will work with not just one provider, but multiple providers. Now, it's interesting that this Stripe webhooks, actually, this function is not mentioned here. It's not mentioned here because of this thing, and I will show you that. When I install the package in the config, in the app, I list all the packages and stuff that I will use, okay? So somewhere here, probably it has mentioned Spati or something like that, okay? And I have a config file which has these secret keys and all the other stuff. Okay? So basically what this package does is tells me, okay, don't worry about Stripe, because Stripe, as a provider of the payment, can send you up to 1,000 different notifications, different URLs. 1,000, okay? So I have to program each one of these routes myself. So payment can fail, payment can succeed, but the user can cancel, okay? The credit card can cancel. You know, the payment might be scheduled to be charged next day. The credit card, you know, maybe something is like in a reserved state, you know, when you reserve stuff, you know, for a few days, etc., etc. So there are thousands of different credit card types of charges that you can have, okay? And each one, when it happens on a Stripe platform, where the customer actually pays, what they do is they call the URL that I program for them, and in this case, it's slanky/super/webhook/stripe, or slanky/super/stripe, something like that, okay? So they call me, and they call one of these routes, okay? And I don't have to list of them, I don't have to program them, I just have to put one line of the code, because that's what the guy did for me. I just need to use those webhooks, okay? Okay, so this is very elegant, okay? Now, I can do different things, okay? So fine, I get the route, so Stripe calls a post requests, fills in lots of little fields, and sends me the data. So it sends me last four digits of the credit card, expiry date of the credit card, the amount of the how much is charged, which product is paid for, how much money is charged, etc., etc. So it gives me all this data in a post format. Okay. So where does this go? Well, what this guy did again, this Patty guy, and he's doing it properly. Where the hell did I go? Slinky, 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 slinky. Ah, there it is. 3, sorry. So this is why he has not this config, pardon, super config webhooks. Okay. So yes, I have to put the secret signing key from Stripe, so they know and I know what the key is, so we can communicate securely. Okay, you can regenerate this every time when you want, so this is not a problem if somebody sees it. These are all old ones. Okay, and in this case, okay, you can find a list of Stripe webhooks here. So this is the whole list of them, and you need to enable them on the Stripe platform. Okay, and then you can define a job that should be run when certain webhook hits your application. So here, in this case, in the configuration file, I'll just say, give me these. I want just to know when invoice payment is fine, when charge has failed, and charge has succeeded. Okay. This is what I want to know, these three things. Because this happens in the background. User is not logged in. There's no even mobile application. User is not on a mobile application because user pays for monthly subscription. So let's say I subscribe today, 1 month from now, I get charged again. User is not next to their computer, I'm not on a server. Everything is server to server background. So it's proper background job. So Stripe executes, charges the customer 1 month from now, gets the money, and then calls the URL that is pre-programmed, and this configuration file says, if you send me a message called invoice payment succeed, run app job Stripe webhooks this specific thing. Where is this app job Stripe webhooks? App job Stripe webhooks handle charge succeed. Okay, and this is the handle. Now, because I never see this in action in live, it's very good idea to log shit which comes from it, okay, especially when I'm programming, okay. So the first thing is that I say, hey, I'm in charge succeed, so I know that in the log I will see this message, so this function is being called, okay. And then I follow the instructions what the guys say, okay, get me the payload, okay. And then I'm parsing this payload because, as I said, it has many information. So this is my request, basically, okay? But this request is handled differently because nobody was actually filling in the form, so I don't have a request. In this case, it's payload, okay? And then I say, okay, fine, do you have an amount? Do you have, if you refunded some money, do you have which currency? Do you have the customer data? And I log that shit in, okay, fine. So I know what the hell it is, okay? And then I do whatever the crap I need to do. In case I have a monthly subscription, each month I need to create an invoice and send it to the customer to say, hey, you paid us another 50 million pounds. Thank you very much for that. So that's what we are doing here. Okay, so the problem that how do I know which one is which is because this guy made such a lovely program that it's so easy to use. I don't have to worry. I just define what jobs I want to be executed, create those jobs, call them whatever the hell I need to call them, and that's it. Any questions? I see that Thomas was sending the same commands in JavaScript to JSON encode and decode. Yep, same thing. Same thing that exists probably in Python and any other language. C doesn't matter. Very similar, you know, because it's the same principle, just probably spelled differently. So, if there are no questions, then I'm not going to go in any other topics. That's pretty much it. But guys, if you don't know, on this page that has been displayed right now, what every line of the code means. If you don't understand that, if it's not absolutely clear what every line of the code means, just like Jesus just asked that kind of question, absolutely feel free to ask me, because I am going to spend the time and answer this idiotic question. It's a stupid question, but I said there are no stupid questions today, because I need to spend it 15 times to explain it properly to you and make sure that you get it, so you don't have to ask me again. Because this is our bread and butter. If this is where you're not sure, whoops, you're never going to be good at programming. So this, you must know. Every line on this page, for example, you have to understand what it is. CH equals URL. Where the hell did he see that? In our push notification, I would assume. So $CH is a variable. Okay, so that's clear. And on the right, we have this curl init, which is a function. Okay? Every function typically returns something. Okay? This curl init, whoops, is a PHP function. Okay? But it's not PHP, standard PHP, it's one of the PHP extensions which is installed. PHP curl init, Control V. Okay? So here, it's a PHP function, and I can see that this curl init started in PHP version 4 and is still available in PHP version 8. This is how it works. This is the parameters it takes, and returns a curl handle on success or false on errors. Okay, so it can return two things. So, my CH variable can hold a curl handle or false. Okay? What the hell is a curl handle? Now this is a problem because these type of documents never describe what a curl handle is. And if you Google that and you keep Googling this forever, you will never learn anything. So that's why it's better if somebody explains to you. But you can go here and say, okay, what the hell curl handle is. Under hood, a resource is a C pointer variable. Oh my God, so this is a brilliant answer. Now I have 7 more questions. What the hell is a C pointer variable? What's hood and what's a resource? If you dig more into C, PHP is written in C, what the hell is this guy on about? He's crazy, you know, so I'm more confused than I was before. So if I want to make a request like get or post request from my code, I can use curl. This is an old way of doing things. And in order to do that, I kind of open line object. That's a handle. It's just an object, curl object. And then I assign some properties which you assign how it wants to do. How I did it, because Laravel obviously says it's more intelligent. Where the hell did I push it? In weather controller, I think. No, where did I put it? In one of the controllers, let me just find in folder HTTP. Yeah, so see this, instead of this curl, they created a HTTP request where I can put those headers and stuff like that, so I can put that information in HTTP request. So is this simpler to send the data to another server from my code, because I can do that? Might be a different lesson. But you typically do this from Ajax. So you make this, and you sometimes use Axios, or you use HTTP plugin or something like that, which handles creating this request. So basically it opens, sends the data, is a post, is a get, and so on, adds secret keys and so on, and adds the variables. Yeah, so device profile, secret key, whatever it is, that's how it's done. Anyway, I hope it was informative. As I said, please do check old videos because they are very useful, and if you don't understand things, what they mean, please write them down, make a list just like Mr. Jesus did. Thank you very much for that list. And ask those questions, okay? And I will talk to you. 3 questions, 4 doesn't matter, but once you understand it, when it's a click, then you will never forget these things. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.